That's what I find so powerful about storytelling. So to me, it's no surprise. I've just been sort of like drumming my fingers a little bit going, like, can we catch up with the storytelling stuff? Like storytelling, like, can we just, let's have a look at Indigenous Australians. They've been telling stories for how long is it now?
Yeah,
60,000 years, is it?
yeah.
Like, that's a pretty good thoroughbred, you know, and we're just, you know, gradually gathering up to it beyond the industrial revolution at 5 minutes to
Five
midnight. Like,
minutes to midnight. Yeah,
which part don't you get? You know,
yeah.
we need story is how you find out about your world and share it and communicate and revel in it too. Like enjoy it, I think.
And especially through the year. I don't know if you're coming from the same space I am in terms of that, but people are going, oh, audiobooks. Wow, it's such an innovation. Let's get onto the platform. You're going, people used to sit around a fireplace and just tell stories to each other.
Yeah.
Like people only started having accessible books, like what, in the 19th century? When printing presses came around.
That's right. It was the that was sort of like the Lutherans. I think it was Luther who's kind of acknowledged with the, you know, first printing press and mass media, and what was that, 15 or 1400s? Oh, I can't remember what it was, but it's really in the whole scale of human existence. It's very, very soon.
Yeah,
it's only just come around. Whereas all, you know, so much of what we know of our history, things like the Viking sagas, you know, the stories of Greek mythology. Another one, like we all know those stories, but they probably weren't written down until when, you know, maybe 1,000 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, they weren't written down, and you'd have professional storytellers, you know, and I think they called them rhapsodists, right?
Oh, lovely. Like where rhapsody comes from.
It's where rhapsody, and actually
rhapsodists
means sewing together.
Ah.
So what a storyteller did was that he'd go from village, and it was usually a bard, you know, it was usually a male, and he would go from village to village, go from village to village, and take those tales with them, and that was their profession, and people would pay them to tell the stories, and they'd go and they'd collect
and they would travel
stories, and that
would of course spread. That would be a mode of. It was like a kind of mailman in a kind of way, or mail person who would share the story from, you know, take things, stories from
Troy. All the heroes and, you know, blah blah blah, and that story has been around for thousands of years.
Yeah, as you say, there's no need for a printing press or an MP3 player for that one.
No, that's right. That's right.
Oh, that's so exciting. Hey, Maria, this will seem like an attempt at a segue, and please forgive me if it is, or you don't want to go down that way.
That's all right.
But your surname, Maria, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, that's an exotic looking surname. I wonder where that's from. And you told me over the phone that you have a Greek ancestry. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we touched on it, you know, just before when we were talking about the Iliad and the stories of the Odyssey and you know, Helen of Troy and all of, you know, and going, you know, way back even further than. Do you think does that change? Do you think your ancestry changes your approach, or it's been part of your desire to get into the storytelling game? Do you think it's in your DNA?
I do think it's in my DNA, but I think it's almost in everybody's DNA, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Like the Celts and, you know, the Druids, they actually didn't believe in writing, that in fact it smudged thought and feeling and stories.
How interesting is that?
So Druids, you will never find anything that's written.
Right.
Okay, so this is my interpretation of all the history that I've read. So
yeah.
wrong, but I love it. I love the idea. That's one of the things that frustrated the Romans when they came to the British Isles, is that the Druids, it was easy to get rid of their culture because nothing was written. Everything was passed down by mouth. And I believe there are other Indigenous cultures that are the same.
Even more recent ones too. Like I think there might be an example from Judaism, that there are certain parts of the Torah which are told in song, and they're to be memorized,
yeah,
and then and passed on to another. And the reason that they're recorded in one of the reasons they're recorded in song is that song will give it a rhythm and a pace which makes it more memorable than just like a bunch of sentences, for example. So it's been constructed so that it can be easily passed on word of mouth rather than, hand of pen.
Yeah. And personally speaking, like my grandmother sort of brought us up, we were three girls, and she went as far as primary school. Like, she came from a farming community in Greece and was very dignified. She didn't like to show that she couldn't really read, but she had so many stories, and we'd sit down and we were literally around her knees, and she'd be telling us stories of how she grew up and of particular characters. Like like characters in the village and what happened to them. Like somebody went down to the river, they came back, and they were never the same. And
they were changed. Yeah,
brights down there who took away her sanity, and
mesmerizing for
great
kids.
Love stories, or the Madonna appearing to someone. It was just amazing. And I'm thinking, this was just part of the routine of life. Yes, storytelling.
Of course, like isn't everyone's grandma just like Maria's?
I kind of think they are. Like,
I think they are too. But as you say, But to call, but to brand these people as like uneducated or illiterate, or all of these awful labels. You're going. I mean, how could you possibly equate illiteracy or lack of intellect or anything horrible like that with such a beautiful storyteller who is telling you in these beautiful florid words with massive imagination and a huge vocabulary.
Yes, of course.
I mean, like the education system. The education system's just proving itself redundant in that case.